Hello, I'm Sérgio Santos, and today I have a question for you. What is your biggest fear? I'm talking about fear because I made a video about anxiety, and for me, fear is very much related with it, and because I'm writing a text about it, and I thought this different format, a video format, might connect better with you. Maybe I'll mention some things that I'll not mention in the text, and the other way around as well. But fear is very important. Focusing on fear was one of the most important things I did in my transformational process. And for me, it's not that I stopped transforming, but there was a big difference between the 5, 6 years ago until now. These were the years that I felt I transformed the most. And that was because there were like large periods of time that I was focusing on fear. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about focusing on the positives, of positives versus negatives, about transforming a negative into a positive. Yes, all that has its space in our life, in our transformation. There are cases that indeed we can do that. That we can drop negative mindsets, we can change our perspective from a negative to a positive one, all of that. But there are simply times that there's something that we consider very negative, fear, and we have just to focus on it. We have just to look at it straight and be honest to ourselves. Stop denying it. And for me, it was so difficult to do that. Even when friends would ask me directly or indirectly about fear, being afraid of this situation or the other, I'll try to deny it. I'll try to say no, tell stories, and at the same time, a part of me knew clearly there was a fear there. Being the fear of being alone, of being rejected, the fear of not being enough. There are many fears, many of them connected. But if you look at your life and you look at your fears, what is the biggest fear you have? And more importantly, if you look at your desires of what you want, where you want to be, and you look where you are right now, what is here in the middle, this distance between the point that you are at and the point you want to be? There are fears in the middle. There are fears that are dragging you down, slowing you down. What are those fears? This is very important. It's important as well because when we deny certain fears, when we avoid them, what happens is the opposite of what we want. They take control. They take more and more control. So the only way really for us to have control over them is to recognize they exist. Admit it. Stop avoiding them, stop denying them, and only then we have the chance to get some grip, to take control over it. I was very afraid of social situations. It's something that I talk about a lot, afraid of talking to people that I haven't talked before. And this, of course, came with anxiety. And this is something that I was really afraid of. So it was about me interacting with others, with the exterior, but there were always a deeper fear inside that only had to do with me, really. Being the fear of not being enough, of being abandoned, being alone. And usually that's what happens. We might think about the situation, we might fantasize or make a scenario in our heads. And we have that fear appearing inside of us, even if it's just a fake scenario, right? It's an illusion, but we are creating it in our heads just to know what is the reaction that appears. That reaction that might be at the surface related with someone else is really in us. It has always to do with us. So what is your biggest fear? If you look at it that way, what's your biggest fear? What's the biggest fear that is between the place that you are at and the place that you want to be? The person that you are right now and the person that you idealize in your head, that is really the person that is your real you. The point that the potentials in you stop being just potentials but become reality. What is the fear then trying to stop you? Am I talking about this because of this tendency that I mentioned before of focusing on the positives, which is very important to do. It is extremely important. That's something that I had to do myself. There are like things that I was dragging from the past, certain perspectives, ideas, mindsets that were quite negative, and there was, apart from my personal history, there was no real reason for them to be there. So those can be done by, instead of focusing on something negative, you can focus on something positive. You can replace perspectives, you can replace mindsets. This is part of the work. And as you analyze fears, you'll see these situations, sometimes more clearly than other times, but they'll be there. Then there's also other situations that you can see the negative side and you can see the positive side. And here there's sometimes a mistake, that is to ignore the negative and put your focus only on the positive. But real key here, when there's different sides that can be qualified of negative or positive, is to bring it together, sort of integrate them, recognize, be realistic. There's negatives and positives. And then there's things that are just like fear, that we say they are negatives, but are they? And if they are negative, you need to focus on those negative bits and address them actively. And for here, to address them is necessary consistency. Action and consistency. So I think there are 5 elements very important in transformation. One is awareness, so this is just to recognize what fear, and then the other is honesty. That's once you see or you feel, you need to be honest that, yeah, I'm feeling this. It's about recognition. It's about you telling to yourself, yes, there's a dark side there and it's quite big. Yeah? Then it's about taking responsibility. That's the 3rd step, taking responsibility for it. So it's about the decision. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to look at it in the eye, that fear, and I'm going to address it. Then it is about the 4th step is action, and then consistency. And they come together, of course. Consistent action towards overcoming that fear. But here there's something else, is that sometimes the fear is there for a reason. It's not about overcoming it, really. Sometimes it's about using it. Because fear puts us on edge. And with that comes some positive things as well. Our reflexes get faster. We can move faster. We have adrenaline running around in our body, so we are physically faster. Our brain can think faster as well, if we use it correctly, because if we don't, it can also paralyze us, can lead us to do stupid things. But the only way to use it the right way is to look at it, is to focus on it, is to recognize it, is to admit it's there, and then to be able to control it, to use it. Because that state that fear put us in, can be used for great things, can be used for us to rise above our standard levels, our normal levels. And fear gives us another opportunity. That is the opportunity to be courageous. Because without courage, without fear, there is no courage. And when it comes to fear, you need discernment to recognize what are the cases that you need to let go of fear, which means becoming fearless. And what are the cases that, yes, being fearful is actually the state that you should be in. If a lion is in front of you, you should be fearful. So if you are fearful, if there's nothing wrong with being fearful, how can you use that fear to your advantage? There's a retired fighter of mixed martial arts called George St Pierre, and he talks about that. He says that before every fight, he was afraid. Every single fight. He thought that over time it would get easier, but only got worse. He was more afraid with time because now the stakes were higher, because now there was more pressure on him. So he's more afraid than ever, each and every fight. And as he was talking about fear with his sports psychologist, the sports psychologist maybe had a little bit of this switching mindsets in mind, and he told him, no, stop calling it fear, call it excitement. And he says about that something that is great. He says, no, it's not excitement. It's fear. I feel fear. Excitement I feel if I fast for 3 days and then I'm having my favorite meal. That's excitement. But at the time I was afraid. And he adds more to it. He says, I'm not afraid to say that I am afraid. And this is really key. And then he talks about, in this particular case of a fight, how it's important to be afraid, how his reflexes are faster and he is faster in a fight if he's afraid. And there are other situations that are not actually fighting, that fear is important, that give us the opportunity to rise above our normal levels. This can be athletic, but can be much more than that. Can be a call for our warrior inside. And fear gives us that opportunity. So here there are several aspects that I mentioned that I just want to put all together. One is, yes, there is a place to focus on the positive. Yes, there is a place for that. There's a place for switching mindset from negative to positive. Switching perspectives, there's a place for that as well. So we have two different kinds of situations. So we need discernment as well. So we need to work on discernment. How can we distinguish from different situations what we have to do? We need to use different tools for different situations. And then I want to have the fourth element, that is, there's a place to be fearless. There's a place to let go of fears, to work on that. And that many times involves trauma therapy or anything related with dealing with past, that once we work to something, some ghosts of the past, the fear disappears, and that's great. So there's a place to work on being fearless. And lastly, the fifth point I want to add is that there is a space to be fearful and to take that fear, to use it to our advantage, to take control over it and use it right. That same fear that stands between the point that you're at right now or the point you want to be, that fear might not actually be stopping you. It might be trying to help you to move faster forward. And again, discernment is the key here. So if you're struggling with fear, if you're struggling with discernment, with all these situations that I mentioned here, first, I really recommend you to read my text that I will publish soon. And the other thing is, send me a private message, contact me, and tell me a little bit about the situation that you're going through. I'll help you with that, either professionally or but just by giving you some useful tips that I use myself, because there are very long periods in my life that I was just focusing on these fears, on distinguishing them, on dealing with them, and all those strategies that I had to use, I had to read about, to learn about. Now I use them not only in my life but with my clients. And I'm not afraid to share them. So drop me a comment below or ask me privately. Tell me your story and I'll do my best to help. I'm Sergio Santos. See you soon. I hope this video is useful for you.